What's going on, guys? Welcome to 8-Bit's Video Game Book Club. We are powered by Audio Technica as we replay some of the finest releases in gaming history. I'm your host for this inaugural episode, Jono Pech, and I'm joined by Commander-in-Chief over here, Brendan White. How you doing? I was going to say Brendan Shepherd.
I'm doing well, thank you, and this is certainly my favourite podcast on the 8-Bit Citadel, so thank you for having me.
That's all right. I mean, this is one of my favourite series to talk about. I know it's one of yours to talk about, so I'm so glad that we can do it together on content today. Of course, this is a book club. We're looking back at Mass Effect, thanks to EA and Bioware's Mass Effect Legendary Edition. We're going to be winding the clock back to 2007 to look at the original Mass Effect. So this is kind of a review of that game as a remaster, but with a twist. So it's taking, you know, what I do on the Comedy Rewind podcast, looking back at something from yesteryear under the modern lens, and we're doing it with a video game book club style approach. What do you think?
I think it's a great concept. Like it's a good way to get a little retrospective and talk about some of these classics that maybe we might not have played or we might not have played since their inaugural release. So it's going to be cool to go back and go through the who's who, I guess, of video game royalty. And I guess it's funny that we're playing Mass Effect here, and yeah, it's a franchise that you and I both adore, but we're playing the new, slightly reimagined version, you could say. Like, we've got the fresh coat of paint here, thanks to that Legendary Edition that EA kindly provided us. And we've got the same experience, but slightly different. You played it on the PlayStation 5. I played it on the Xbox Series X. But, yeah, what is old is new again, I guess you could say, for this one here for Mass Effect 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just like watching an old movie when it's released on Blu-ray. I feel like, you know, it's been touched up a little bit here and there. Maybe, you know, they did some color grading to make it look a bit different. There's not like, I mean, it's been a while since I played the first game, which we'll get into, but I feel like they didn't, it's not like on par with some of the remakes that feel like for example, the Crash Bandicoot remake. They completely redid it from scratch. This is more just like, let's fix some of these hard edges and that kind of thing.
I'm right there with you there. Like, it's not quite the Malibu Stacy with the new hat. It's somewhere in between that and Crash Bandicoot and Resident Evil 2 and Nemesis, where you can see like the improvements are noticeable, whether it be in the gameplay or in the graphics themselves. But like, it's not like you're playing a completely brand new game. You're not sort of jumping back into this world and going, who are these characters? Like, you know, what is this world? Like, it's still that familiar space-shaped comfort food that we loved back in the late 2000s. And, you know, did we still love it today? We'll find out.
Yeah. And at the same time, like we'll get into this in detail, but to me, it didn't feel like I was playing an ancient video game. Like sometimes you play, you know, a remaster or whatever you want to call these HD re-releases, and the controls are all weird, and, you know, it just goes, yes, things have changed a lot, and things have changed a lot. There's some things that we'll get to that maybe age the game quite a bit, but for the most part, I enjoyed replaying it. Let's dig back to our first experiences with this game. Do you remember your first experience with Mass Effect as a franchise?
I do indeed. Like, I had this one on my radar for a while. I was a big Bioware fan, and seeing that this was going to be an Xbox console exclusive on the 360 back in 2007 when it dropped, I was very excited. So this was a day one purchase for me. I remember going to JB Hi-Fi in Belconnen in Canberra and picking this up, and I pretty much played hooky the rest of that afternoon and took the next day off work and sort of smashed this thing out over the span of those few days and then the subsequent weekend afterwards. So it hooked me from the jump. Like, I would have been about 21 then, so you know, maybe at the height of my powers, who knows? But yeah, it was a really, really great experience. Like, I love science fiction, I love big, massive RPGs, and getting them melded together in a console experience. It was very unlike most of the games that you'd get on console up until that date, especially with some of the things we'll talk about with what this game did later, but it just blew me away. Like, it wasn't without a couple of little warts and annoyances, which we'll talk about maybe a bit later too, but overall, like, the narrative got me. I was caring about all the characters. I was taking time to talk to anybody that would cross my path. I'd constantly go revisit everyone on the Normandy, just catch up with mates. Hey, how you doing? What's news? Let's dig deeper on this, or let's flirt with them that way, or whatever. Like, it was a game where you cared about every single moving part in the entire world you were in, and it was so fresh for me back then. And yeah, big nostalgia hit when I've been playing this over the last week or two. It's been great.
Yeah, to me it was a bit like putting on like an old, like you're digging through, maybe you're cleaning out the cupboard and you find like an old t-shirt and you're like, oh, I love this t-shirt, and you put it on and it still fits just the same. For me, Mass Effect, like the first one, as you mentioned, being the Xbox exclusive, I didn't even really know about it until a few years later. I think I was at a friend's place in like 2010, and he's like, have you played Mass Effect? And I was like, no. So I played like the tutorial or the introduction, created a character, and that was my first time like coming across it. And then I think because Mass Effect 2 was releasing on the PS3, I decided, well, I need to play Mass Effect 1, but it wasn't released on the PS3, so I had to play it on the PC.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually bought a PC game, which doesn't really happen much.
Wow.
I've still got it up there. It's the one box on my shelf that's like the different size of everything else. But yeah, so I played it on PC. I thought this was really cool. And then for Mass Effect 2, I was all in on the PS3. You couldn't carry the save over, obviously, but it came with this little interactive comic to fill in your choices that you made in the first one. And so because of that, because it was on PC, I haven't actually gone back to it until now. So it's been 11 years since I played it. Meanwhile, I played Mass Effect 2 and 3 a lot. So I was very familiar with those, not so much with this one, which was one of the reasons I was so keen to get back to it and kind of see like how it all started. Almost like a prequel to these games that I'm very familiar with in that sense. So
that's so great.
Yeah, so getting back to it and, hearing over the years that this was more of a role-playing game and they took away these elements that that made it more of that style, it was cool to go back and see, yeah, like the skill tree is like so much wider and there's XP that you get for doing everything, and everything kind of gears towards like you've got your weapon stats, and I'm about 30 hours into Mass Effect 2 at the moment, and all the gun stats from the first game are gone, so you have to just kind of go with what feels right to you instead of what's actually the most powerful weapon. So Mass Effect 1 really is that kind of RPG with, all the skill trees and everything that was watered down later on for, I guess, favoring more of the third-person shooter cover-based kind of deal that they moved into. So it was cool to kind of get the reminder of how the franchise started and how these characters met and how they first formed these relationships. And you're riding with Garrus, all the way through the series. Liara's there all the way through. You come across Rex again, and Tali's obviously there. So yeah, to get these moments where you get to see them meet for the first time was really special, I think, especially when you've spent so much time with all these characters throughout the years.
Yeah, they become like, it's going to sound very probably cliched and silly, but they become like this extension, like they're part of your big video game family. Like when you have that continuity from 1, 2, and 3 and the relationships that you literally work on in the game like you do in real life, to befriend these people or romance them or whatever your preferred outcome is, like seeing that develop and seeing them peel layers away slowly with repeat conversations and navigating the sort of the dialogue options in certain ways, it was really, really refreshing. And yeah, getting that payoff with some of these characters through the entire of the 3 games was awesome. One thing that took me by surprise that I've forgotten, because I hadn't played this since I did that first run through in 2007. So it's been a long time since I played Mass Effect 1. And I forgot how quickly you assemble your squad. Like the entire squad, like you have all 6 of those party members. I know it's a lot less than 10 minutes, but that's what it feels like. It feels like you just meet them all at once. You're like, yo, we mates now? Yeah, come on this spaceship. Let's go on an adventure. Like it happened.
The first couple of hours, definitely. Yeah.
Super quick, which was great. But yeah, it felt very very foreign to me at the same time because I'm like, I thought there was a bit more work that went into this, but I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I think because especially in 2 and 3, you build that crew over the course of the entire game, and there's so many more people. Like, there's probably 10 characters to pick from in Mass Effect 2 compared to your 6, I think.
Correct, yeah. I think there's, with the DLC, I think it brings it out to, I think it's maybe 11 or 12 in total for 2. Because you get the DLC characters, yeah.
It's a lot anyway. But yeah, you're totally right about, building relationships with these people, and it is almost like real life because you're like, oh, I haven't talked to Joker for a while. I better go see if he's doing all right, if he's got anything new to say, if he's happy with everything on the Normandy, just checking in. And you're right, it's like managing those relationships. So really, probably the first instance in a game that I can remember doing that, which we'll get to because I think this game has had its legacy and had its impact and influence on future games. But just for this playthrough, this new one, revisiting it, what kind of character build did you do? Who did you romance? Give me all the details.
Okay, so all the details. I
male or female, I should say.
I went male Shep again, so I've played through. I know it's going to be boring or whatever, but all my Mass Effect playthroughs has been male Commander Shepard. I haven't gone the Fem Shep route, so no issues with that. But that's just the way I'd always played this game, and I guess boringly I did the same for this one. But like, I remember my first Mass Effect run through. I just went as the soldier class, but I went with the Vanguard on this one, but I didn't pay proper enough attention because I forgot that the Vanguard, you don't get the charge ability until Mass Effect 2 and 3, which broke my heart because I loved that ability where you can just like, you're literally a human bullet and you're zipping around the battlefield and smashing into people there and then zipping here and there. Where in this one, you got to take a lot of cover and just pot away and use your warp and barrier and lift and your throw here or there. So I was a bit disappointed in myself with going that route, but I thought because I'm going to play through all 3 again, I want that continuity, and I'll get charge in 2, which I've got now, which is great. But you can
respec at the start of 2, just so
correct,
in case you have any second thoughts. But yeah, I went with an infiltrator. I like the sniper rifles in these games, especially in the 3rd one when you can start shooting through those shields with the little slot. And there's a trophy called like male slot or something, which I always enjoyed with the sniper rifle. So I went with that one, and I also wanted, because I think I went soldier on my original playthrough, and it was all just like the gun-based kind of attacks.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a bit more to work with. So obviously you have like your overload and the abilities to like kind of hack AIs and that kind of thing. I always try to play with a couple biotics, so that's the only reason that I don't play as a biotic, because I like to, like, do you tend to command the rest of your squad or just let them do what they want?
Depends on what was happening on the battlefield at the time. Like, I'd always have them to use all their abilities, because you know how you can have them to do defensive or attack based only, but I give them free reign. I trust them, but like I'd synergize where I'd grab like Liara and use the what's the, I'm having a mental blank on her ability where she just like summons like that void, like that black hole, and it draws them all in.
The singularity.
The singularity, that's the word I'm looking for. So I'd use that and then like use a couple of my abilities in there just to get it all popping. Put warp in there as well, so it just starts dotting on top of the singularity, and then having Grunt or Rex, in there, just, popping sort of assault or a shotgun based damage on top of that. So yeah, I was the same. I'd try and mix and match my party loadout as much as I could, but primarily I found myself rolling with like I was doing a lot of like heavy, just pure biotic at the time too, where it'd be myself as a Vanguard, I'd have Tali and I'd have Liara, and just be having just abilities just going off left, right, and center. I'd bring in Garrus or Rex here and there. Never Caden or Ashley, to be honest. Just because they're a bit boring characters and stuff we'll talk about later. But yeah, it was always myself and the aliens in my crew. Yeah.
Who'd you keep out of Ashley? Well, I guess we should say full spoilers for this game, obviously.
Yeah. But, nothing's off limits here at the old at the book club. So
who did you save out of Caden and Ashley?
So in games prior, in my first run, I remember I saved Ashley, but
me too.
in this one, I actually flipped the script and went old Vanilla Slice and grabbed Caden. So I've saved Caden on this playthrough. Ashley and her deeply ingrained racism is not welcome on my Normandy, so she's out of here. Yeah. She died. She died in Vermeer.
Yeah, I went the same direction, believe it or not. But I think.
Oh no, Romance Liara.
Me too. Yeah. Was that a hard thing for you, knowing that your girl Miranda was around the corner?
Yeah, it is very difficult. Very difficult, and I'm sort of at the crossroads in two at the moment, where I'm like, do I focus on that sort of honoured path where I'm like, no, Liara's my girl now, that's the way it's going to go, or do I pick up the very gorgeous Australian special force, the pseudo spy that she is, and Cerberus, get her involved? Yeah. But
you know what's funny is I romanced Miranda originally as well, but when you choose not to, which I have in this playthrough, she's a real biatch. She's not nice at all.
Yeah.
She is not cool. She's kind of abrasive.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because she's got some of the she has similar mindsets with Ashley regarding some of the alien races. Some of the things she says where if you're not in love with Miranda, you're like, whoa, baby, what's this about? That's not welcome on my ship either. Settle down here. Settle down. I don't know what Cerberus have been indoctrinating you with, but just cool your jets. Cool your jets, lady.
Yeah. I played as Femme Shep because Jennifer Hale is just an amazing performance in all across this series, and
she's a god.
Getting the chance to interview her last year, I was like, how can I not re-roll with Femme Shep? I've done both playthroughs with male and female over the years, but not Femme Shep in the original Mass Effect. So yeah, really cool to do that. And as I mentioned, I went with the Infiltrator, Romance Liara, and
it's bad Caden.
Yeah, exactly. Because I got the Platinum Trophy for this game, it meant that I had to command people to use certain powers a certain amount of times. Mm-hmm. So I was micromanaging completely for most of the game, and at the same time you have to do 5 missions with each character, so it includes side missions, so you can kind of grind it out pretty easily. That's the only reason I would ever use Ashley or Caden.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, we're going to move into kind of the more comedy rewind style categories now. So I've got the Metacritic score here in front of me. We usually do Rotten Tomatoes, but Brendan, do you have any idea what the Metacritic score is for Mass Effect?
91 for Xbox 360.
It was indeed, yes. Mm-hmm. That's the highest, and that was where it was most reviewed. But man, that's a good score, and it's good to know that the game was popular at release and earned that reputation. It wasn't like a cult hit or anything like that.
Yeah, and it came out in a year that saw Assassin's Creed and BioShock also release. So it was amongst some other equally very impressive titles, and sits pound for pound with that sort of royalty as well.
Yeah. So the big movies and TV shows that were out at the same time that this game released, I've got here Transformers came out, 300 released, I Am Legend, Ghost Rider, The Rise of the Silver Surfer came out. What's SM3?
I was trying to work out what that was, looking at the notes. I'm like, SM3?
Far out. Now I'm going to have to look it up. Oh, no, Spider-Man 3.
Oh, Spider-Man 3. Okay, because I was stumped. I looked at that and I'm like, what the hell was SM3?
I remember writing it thinking, I'll write SM3 so Brendan doesn't know what it is. But then I
you're
forgot
right. You were bang on the money. That was when they took Venom to the wood chipper. And
yeah. My dude Topher Grace they did him nasty on the big screen.
God,
but
they did him and Venom nasty together.
That was the #1 grossing movie that year.
That's insane.
Yeah. On the small screen, we had the debut season of Mad Men.
Mm-hmm.
It was also right in the middle of 30 Rock, Chuck, Entourage, Dexter, House, The Sopranos, and The Office. So pretty good year. Pretty good time to be watching TV.
Great year. I've watched all of those shows season to season. I've finished all of those movies you mentioned. they're all pretty great outside of maybe Ghost Rider. You know, seeing old Nick Cage as Johnny Blaze was a bit how you doing? But you know, it is what it is. We gotta.
Are you gonna stand behind Silver Surfer?
Oh no, I'm completely just ignoring that as well. It was Terabad as well. So started great with those first 4 you mentioned, then it went downhill very swiftly from there.
I went with like the nerd culture kind of relevant movies. There was obviously like some huge, you know, critical acclaimed movies like No Country for Old Men and that kind of thing. But for the purposes of this conversation, Ghost Rider. Filmed in Melbourne.
Which is great. Only good thing about that movie.
Yeah. Hopefully it didn't kill the franchise's potential future, because that's a character that I would love to see how they can possibly pull it off in the MCU.
Well, they've made it. They did the sequel, which was worse than the first one. Yeah, definitely do not ever go back and watch that. But they did him really, really well in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, we got a good amount of Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I thought it was really well done. So hopefully we'll see him in Phase 4 or Phase 5. Bring him back out of hell, because he's so great.
I had no idea that was a thing. There you go. All right, so getting back to Mass Effect, what did you have as the most iconic sequence in this playthrough?
I don't know if it's like my answer. I took it as like my, like from the way it made me feel emotionally, whether it be good, bad, or otherwise, and it was the whole Vermeer mission, because that was, for me, even now, like doing this replay and seeing some of these mechanics just more common now in a lot of these RPG style games, when you are presented with these choices where you can potentially have Rex killed right near the start of that mission because the genophage is causing all kinds of trouble and the Krogans are going insane, and you can like tell one of your squad mates to just pop him in the head, or you kill him, or you can talk him down. So that to me still stood up. And then obviously you've got the choice later with Caden and Ashley, who you're saving. So the fact that you can go from having a full squad to being down 2 in the span of this one mission, where there is some other big ramifications playing through on this mission as well. But that's where I sort of went with it, because you get a awesome face-to-face with Saren in Vermeer, and you get the introduction to the Reapers and the threat that's posing and all that stuff. And then you're having these massive big moral choices where it's like, does Rex get gunned down here? Who do I save? Who do I sacrifice? And seeing it play out in Shepard's face as well, like they actually got him to have or Shepard's face, him or her, whoever you're playing, you see the emotion, like when you're flying off, and like that moment of realization where Ashley or Caden are dying here, and that's your choice. Like you can see it sort of really impacting him, and that whole mission as a whole, just like gut punch and you know, sense of sadness and just really, really tense and heavy on the heart.
Yeah, it's one of those moments, like it feels like very true to the whole like idea of being like a commander, where the person isn't dying in front of you in your arms. It's like you're making a decision that will likely lead to their death. Yeah. And that's what happens here. It's like, you know, you pick the person that you're going to go and help, therefore the person that you're not helping is doomed. So to see the you know, the way that they handled that was pretty interesting. I had that mission as well in another way, where I wrote meeting the Prothean for the first time. It's the VI, as they call it. And that kind of shed so much light on who those people were and what happened to them. And that's such a mystery throughout this game and throughout the whole series, really. Yeah. Right up to 3. So I found that was a really cool sequence. The two other kind of like most iconic ones that I had were anytime you kind of interact with the council and you have the choice to be like polite and like,
or just middle fingers, you know,
or just like, you know, like Wu-Tang, I'm out of here.
That's it. Yeah.
And I definitely went Wu-Tang on the last one, where they kind of, you know, they just don't really appreciate the sacrifice. Like they don't believe you. You're like, hey, it happened. I was there. And they're like, oh, our records.
And it's constant disbelief, like repeatedly throughout the entire first Mass Effect, where you're like, yo, I experienced these things. I saw these things. Oh, we didn't see it, so it's not true. Yeah. I had these visions. Oh, we can't really do anything about a vision. Oh, the evidence is inconclusive. It's like, fuck you guys. You know, you're not doing anything.
Totally. And then it all comes to a head at the end of the game when you have the choice to kill them or not.
Which I did like, both times.
You killed them?
Yeah.
I think I killed them the first time I played because I was like, nah, screw those guys. But this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the bigger man or the bigger woman in this case. And I'm going to save them. But then I'm going to rub it in their face afterwards and be like, hey, if you listened to me, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, okay. So you just threw a bit of spice at them and a bit of shade after the fact. See, I wanted to save the innocent civilians. I'm like, man, we can get a new council. Who cares? We'll save the masses, and they frustrate me. And then, yeah, all is well with the world. You know, you're rebuilding the council and getting Anderson on there, or Adina if you want. But I'm always in Anderson's corner. Adina can get out of here. He could have died with the council for all I care.
Who's picking Udina? That's what I want to know. Like, who's crazy enough to do that? I think one of the reasons I did save them was because I googled like what happens in Mass Effect 2 if you save them, and they reinstate you like as a Spectre, which doesn't happen if you let them die. So I went with the long term kind of vision with that one. The other incident or the scene that I wanted to mention is the confrontation with Saren at the end of the game. So the first time I played this game, I guess I didn't really understand the whole like Paragon Renegade thing, and I probably just did whatever I felt like at the time. But building up like enough in one category gives you the power to make these decisions that you can't make otherwise. So I just fought Saren like a normal end of the game boss fight, But this time round, having all those Paragon points, I was able to, get him to realize that he's been indoctrinated and kill himself, which I didn't realize the first time I played was even an option. So it was cool to kind of experience that firsthand, not just like watching a YouTube video or something, thinking that was the end, and then the Reaper's like bringing him back to life and you have to fight him again anyway. So I thought that whole thing was handled really well, and I'm guessing for the time, 2007, it was probably a pretty out there thing. I know that Fallout, like those old RPG games in the 90s had these kinds of things where you could like get your speech high enough to talk like the boss into, killing themselves or whatever. But at this AAA, like very cinematic level to see this kind of handled, I thought was really cool. Yeah,
it was my first experience with seeing that sort of cause and effect where what you say matters, like it's, for the most part, in a lot of RPGs, you just chuck like selecting which line sounds the coolest.
Yeah.
And seeing it where they only give you maybe a slight phrase, and that's not exactly going to be verbatim with what Shepard will say, and then shaping that conversation from there. But having the power to talk someone off a ledge or talk them into combat or whatever, renegade or aggressive state was really powerful. And I remember that in sort of my first run through where I was blown away, because I didn't play many of the big PC RPGs and stuff like the ones you mentioned. I was brought up on console, and we didn't really get a ton of that where you were getting a lot of massive beefy narrative, especially to that extent. So yeah, I was blown away. I actually managed to get him. He killed himself for me in my first playthrough in 2007. So yeah, I still remember it to this day, and I'm happy that was on your list as big iconic sequences.
Yeah. So Brendan, what holds up the best in this playthrough? What is it that you play this game and you think, this hasn't aged today?
I think the biggest part for me is the world building. I think the fact that they flesh out this Milky Way solar system, your crew on the Normandy, they've all got their own backgrounds, they've got their own origins, their own ideals, and being able to have all these different conversations. And it's not just you have that one conversation, you revisit them 5 more missions later, and that's the same one. Like, there's character development there. You've got new story, new backstory, new history, new jokes, new flirting up, whatever it is, whichever options and whichever characters you're talking to. So the crew members have a part to play in the decision making of the game. I found myself constantly thinking about, what would my crew think of me in this situation? I want to be a nice upstanding commander here and whatnot. So trying to be on the same page as my party members and have that same sense of influence was awesome. So I think Bioware nailed that the most. Like, they've been great at characters and character development. But I think Mass Effect was where they really hit it out of the park for me. And that's the thing that sort of holds up the best. A couple of quick little ones as well, and then I'll throw it over to you. But like, yeah, the dialogue wheel, which we've sort of touched on here and there already. The morality rating with Paragon and Renegade, I really liked that there was this, it's not just a pure good or bad response. It's, if you wanted to be a little bit brash, I wanted to be a little bit blunt, or as you said, go Wu-Tang on these guys. You could be as straighty 180 or as sort of snarky and wisecracky as you like. So I like that you could sort of change your thought processes on the fly, and that wouldn't break you down or build you up in the one. You see that Renegade and Paragon level just adjusting slowly each time. I like that you could sort of see the weighting of what you said.
And it's not exactly like a good and evil.
No.
Like you got the Fallout games and some of these other games where it's like, or like an Infamous, for example, it's like, am I going to be good or evil? And in this game, it's like, are you going to be a badass or are you going to be like diplomatic?
Yeah.
And they're both like usually good. Sometimes the Renegade one is kind of like, oh, let all these people die so that we can, put our mission first or whatever. And that kind of, maybe that is a bit more evil, but it's like, both of them are valid options. And I think that's why like Bioware was so disappointed to say like 8% of people picked those Renegade options for all the effort that they put into writing like this almost a second game as far as all the dialogue goes.
I guess people were just so trained that they read that as, blue is good, red is evil. So they just went, you know what, I don't want to be an evil character. I'm just going to go Paragon, Paragon, Paragon the whole time. But when you see that it is more based on attitude and they're both in the grey for different reasons, it really shapes how you can play. Then the other part, just the soundtrack to this game, like, it's so like it's great.
Tier,
yeah, like Jack Wall and Sam Hulwick put it together, and it's just like 80s electronic, and there's orchestra in the back end and parts of it. It's very like Blade Runner-esque, the soundtrack, and it's so great, like, and very distinctive depending on the planets you're going to, the missions that you're tackling. It's all very unique, and it just sort of accompanies everything else in the game really, really well.
Yeah, that like galaxy map music that's the same throughout the whole series. It's just like ingrained into my brain. The boop, 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 boop. Like it's just
so 80s.
It's just, it's awesome. Now, they're all really good responses. I'm with you there. Like the world building to start with, like the way that they've handled lore in this game is so good because it's incredibly deep. Like, there's this codec that I never read, but every time you talk to someone, something gets added to it, and you can go in there and read like the entire history of this universe if you want to. But if you don't want to, because you'd rather just play the game, it's all like referenced there. And knowing it now, because I've played the game so many times, and all three of them, when you hear someone mention like the Hanar or the Elcor, and this is why they do this or that, I have that knowledge from playing it so many times. But even going back to the start, it was all thought of from the very beginning, and I really think that that's such a cool way to do it. And some games like bash you over the head with lore, and because it's all there in the codec, it's kind of just all optional, I think, which is cool.
Yeah, and you're presented with enough information in this world organically anyway. You don't have to go into those codecs. But if you just want to go that layer deeper and get some additional information, it's there for you. So you don't have to feel like you're reading through text on a screen to get the full experience. You're going to get that full experience during your playthrough. But then if you want to take that next step, it's there for you as well, which I think is really well done.
Yeah, and so from like the storytelling side of things, I think the pacing for this game is fantastic. You mentioned before how quickly the crew comes together, and I think that is really just done so well, because the game starts, it kicks off, you get introduced to Shepard as like this, awesome war hero or whatever, whichever way you decided to pick as the backstory. And then first mission, you touch the beacon, you get the vision, and that kind of sets off the whole chain of events. And within 60 or 90 minutes, you've recruited this freakish looking, awesome, like Krogan warrior, and this Garrus, the Turian, who's like this weird bird looking alien thing. And it's just like already you've got like the masterclass in character design where everyone looks so different from each other, and you've like the blue kind of exotic Asari there with their special powers, and it's like everyone being so different from each other makes it works so well, and that's really how I want to see a crew assembled in a video game. It's why that Caden and Ashley are just like get rid of them, because they're just vanilla white people who are just like interchange them with anyone, and they wouldn't stand out at all. Yeah. So no interest in having them. You want someone that looks, a bit different, I think. And
they sort of lay that foundation with 1, and then just really run with it with 2 and 3. Like the characters you get introduced to, and just the focus on all these other alien races instead of the generic humanoid that we play in just about every game. It's awesome. But shout out to Jenkins too, who gets killed off instantly on that first mission. You're like, oh, some good commander. You send him down like onto the beachfront there and just pew, and he's gone. And you're like, oh, righto.
Yeah, what happened to his shields?
Yeah, he had none. He didn't turn them on.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, ran out of battery. Forgot to bring his battery pack.
Yeah.
Oh well. So the other one I wanted to mention for holding up well was like the sense of exploration that you get in this game. I don't know about games of this period, but like when playing this, I just wanted to run into every nook and cranny of the Citadel and find all the Seekers and like just talk to everyone. And then you do land on these uncharted planets, and even though the Mako kind of sucks, and they did improve the controls for it a bit, we'll get into that probably in the next question. But it's so fun to like explore and find like, okay, here's like some ruins, and here's like the mummified remains of a Solarian, which at that point in the game you might not even have come across a Solarian. So you're like, oh, what's this and what's that, and just kind of like finding minerals and not it's a half-baked idea in a sense, because there was nothing to do with a lot of these resources. It was just kind of to fill out like a quest log. It was more the second and third games where you could, upgrade the Normandy and upgrade your weapons and all these things with what you find along the way. But for a game as old as it is, I felt like that was handled fairly well.
Yeah, I think it did great. Like landing on some of these little planets in these random subsystems and cruising around the Mako and finding down satellites for the Admiral and things like that, or finding random sort of decrepit bases and going in and getting a little unrelated bit of backstory that like it's not going to change the game, but it just adds just this just sense of excitement. It's got this nice like exploration thing where it pays to get off the beaten track and jump onto these planets that don't have any direct impact into the mainline story, but you'll learn and get rewarded along the way. And the world feels
so big because of it.
Yeah, and I'm happy they've streamlined the mining processes on these planets too. No longer scanning the planets and dropping probes down and things like that. It's just you select that planet, and if you can scan it and mine it, you just press the A or the X button, and away you go.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of probing in Mass Effect 2 when you get to it. I just did the Sol system where you can probe Uranus.
Yeah.
And the AI, I can't remember if it's ED or just the general AI is like, really, Commander?
So good.
Yeah. Okay, what holds up the worst? This is a game from 2007, so not everything is going to translate into, what is effectively 2 console generations later.
I think we're on... I didn't add, like, anytime that you had something I already agree with, I just didn't put it twice. So some of the ones that you mentioned, I'll agree with there too. But ones that weren't on your short list, some of the facial animations and expressions are still a little bit, how you doing? Like, it is an old game, and they did improve some of the character models and the textures and things. But occasionally it was just like, Shepard was looking all kinds of bizarre, especially when there's sort of a camera looking up towards him, and his eyebrows get somehow swallowed by like the eye sockets and things at times. So I'm like, oh, this is a bit weird. What's going on here? So some of the animations were still a bit strange, even movement occasionally, like where I'd skip through a couple of random discussion points with an NPC, and I'd go through too quick, but somehow Commander Shepard would be locked into that conversation, so I'd try and walk away, but then he's like looking at them still, so I'm like moonwalking backwards, stuck trying to end this scene which I've already ended. So there was a few times like that where I'm like, whoa, hang on a second.
There was,
bit broken
there
here.
there was some weird things, like every time you approach Caden, whatever his name is, it gives you like a 3-second like sidle up towards him animation, and then he turns and looks at you. And because it's so slow and awkward, it almost feels like there's like sexual tension, regardless of whether you're romancing him. It's like he's looking at you and he like stares at you for 3 seconds before he says anything. And having to look at that every single time you interact is kind of like, ugh, this again. But yeah, the jankiness of those facial animations is, I guess, something that was going to be way too much work to go back and touch up every single one.
Yeah.
It's more like they went back and fixed the lighting to make people look better and stuff like that, which it like you look at it and it doesn't look like a PS3 Xbox 360 game. It looks, I guess, more like an early, I want to say it's like an early PS4 game, I think.
Yeah,
for the most part.
at times, like there were moments where I found myself in awe of these graphical enhancements, and then other times I'm like, this just feels like I'm playing on my Xbox 360, and that's fine. It's fine. Like, had a great game, and the graphics weren't a negative impact to my experience. Like, I still adored this second run through on the Xbox Series X, but yeah, some of the animations are a little bit off here and there. The controls, whether it be driving the Mako, they did make some enhancements and improvements to the steering of that thing. It still sucked, but whatever. But then even
some games still use that. So, like Borderlands 3 has vehicles that still have the like left stick to go forward and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just don't like those mechanics, but I'm not a game developer, so I'm going to sort of leave that opinion at the door. But then just the controls in combat, like just ability management, squad management, weapon management, like the fact that hitting Y or triangle to change weapons, it is only going to jump between 2 instead of the 4. Like with 1, you're allowed to, like they've opened it up now where no matter what class you can use assault rifles, snipers, shotguns, pistols. But you only when you're pressing the sort of the quick swap button, it's just going to cycle between 2, which is frustrating. Being only able to map one ability to a button sucks too. So even though you're in the heat of this battle and you're hiding and cover firing and popping abilities here and there, like, hang on, I'm going to press RB or R1 now and jump in, cycle to there, hit that for this person, cycle there, hit that to that, let go of the button, watch that play out. Okay, now I'm going to do it again. Hold it in again, cycle there. So it sort of breaks up the game flow a little bit for me. So that was a little bit annoying. But they're the main ones. And then the one other quick shout out to the vision that Shepard has when he touches the old Prothean, and you get like this 80s 90s horror cut mixing in like real cinematography of like real humans with like horror scenes and like monster teeth and all this. Like it felt like it was something out of like I was watching Hellraiser, and like it cracked me up every time that they cut back to that vision that he had or she had, and it's great, but it's bad at the same time.
Yeah, on the controls, like I hate having to hold down X for me. I don't know what it is on Xbox, sorry. To run. Like I'm just so to hold that down to run and then having like the stamina run out.
And that's another thing.
Especially when you're on
no stamina. Like
especially when you're on a level like the Citadel where there's no combat essentially, and you just have to like run slowly instead of sprint.
I'm pretty sure though, like in Mass Effect 1, you couldn't run at the Citadel. It was just like a brisk walk the whole time. So they added the ability to run, I think, for the Legendary Edition. So, but then, for like
6 seconds.
I've got better stamina than Commander Shepard, like this war hero that's proven and he's a killing machine and he's a fitness fanatic. He runs for 5 seconds and he's gassed. I'm like, maybe like that should have increased as your level increases, but no, that's it. You're good for a burst and that's it. So that's frustrating to me.
Yeah, that's still there in the second one, but there's no meter for it anymore, so you don't know, like, you don't know that it's going to run out. So apart from not being able to, I would have liked to be able to remap that to like holding like the modern kind of L3, like pushing the trigger to sprint kind of thing. But I understand like that's used for other things in the future games. It's used to pinpoint like a waypoint, like a compass to tell you which direction to go. That doesn't exist in the first game, and I found that really frustrating. You're doing a quest and you're trying to find which direction you're supposed to go. And sometimes it's it's not like always a completely linear path, and you just have to guess. And there's not like, you know, it'll be like, go to this planet and find like, you know, a guy outside this marketplace, and you just have to figure out where the marketplace is without the aid of like a map or with anything to tell you like where this person is. You just have to kind of wander around. So I would have really liked them to add, I guess, some kind of waypoints, especially on the galaxy map, when you basically have to go into your journal and look at the mission, look at what planet it's on, look at what system it's in, and then go there, find it on the map. Instead of like, as they implemented in the second one, like it'll have the name of the system and underneath it'll list the missions that you can do in that area.
It's so helpful in 2. Like that was a frustration for me in 1, where I'd constantly, like, I wasn't paying enough attention when I'd look in the journal for the planet and whatever else. So I'd then go back into the galaxy map. I'm scanning. I'm like, oh crap, what was it again? Hang on. Go out of the galaxy map, back into the journal. Okay, that's the one I got to go to. Okay, and get there again. It's, you know, the load time improvements were great, especially for the galaxy traversal and the elevator experiences. That was a lot quicker, and being able to skip through some of that dialogue and interaction on those elevators was great, but it was still a little bit rough at times.
Yeah, the elevators being there are really like vestigial elements of a time where they were needed for those loading times, whereas now they just feel like they're stuck there with them because they were implemented for a purpose that doesn't need to be there anymore. I was surprised that there was loading points just going between the systems, like not even going between the planets. But I guess, again, that's just the way the game was built at the time. The only other, like, we're talking, I guess, now about like system issues with the way that the game design was put together. The checkpoints were really frustrating sometimes as well, where, you know, you'd be in the middle of a mission and you'd make a decision like, okay, see you, Ashley, you're done for, I'm picking the other guy. And then, like, you might die within that quest, and it puts you all the way back to the conversation at the start of that cutscene. And then you have to decide again, okay, I said see you, Ashley, get out of here, you're done for. And then you go through it all again. It happened a few times to me, and it was kind of frustrating, especially if it was a particularly, like, tough fight or you know, you just happen to die a few times and have that again. Or if you were doing a mission, like, you know, you land on a planet, it's a side mission, and there's no save points for the entire mission, and you get to, like, near the end, and then you're like, crap, now I have to drive in the Mako, which sucks already, to the, you know, the base or whatever it is, get in there, shoot everyone outside, take out the turrets, go in. It's just so much, when it would just make sense that when you change rooms, like, you know, you enter a new setting and it has to load in that new setting, you just assume with modern, you know, progress that we've made,
auto save right there. Yeah,
it's not, it wasn't to be. And even, like, again, I'm not much of a game developer. I technically am a game developer, but I don't know why they wouldn't have implemented some more robust autosaves for this remake. I guess it's being true to the original.
Yeah, it's true. You feel that same pain and sense of exhaustion where, you push through a massive big section of this game and then you die and then you spun right back to the beginning. You're oh my God. I don't know if I have it in me again. I can't quit you, Caden. We've had
our hands held for too long, I guess. It's one of the things, like, when we talk about these things that haven't aged well, it's really more a celebration of how far games have come since 2007, in a way. Yeah,
that's true.
So, because this is a book club, I thought we should talk about some of the themes of Mass Effect. So, what do you feel like are the prevailing themes that you took away from your time with this experience?
I think the biggest one in Mass Effect is racism. And you've sort of met with that right from the get-go, where you're obviously trying to be the next Spectre, and the Turians have got a clear distaste towards humanity. And, you know, there's a lot of tension and lack of trust and hostility amongst the races. And, like, the Council is is a mixture of alien races, but they don't have, they don't have human representation in this group of key decision makers. So this is a big thing for humanity, where in most of the games, you see humanity's the big go-getter and the leader of the universe. But in this, we're almost like the poor cousin, we're coming up through the ranks and we're still one of the lesser developed races. So there's a lot of racism in that regard. And it's not just sort of aliens looking towards the humans. Obviously, you have some pretty intense discussions and hearing how Ashley has just grown up in this military family, and she's been racist since the great grandpappy, pretty much. Like, she does not feel too positive towards the aliens and having them on board the Normandy, and can't trust them and can't let them in and show them all these military secrets and rah rah rah. So racism is probably the biggest one for me. And another theme, just thinking back to sort of at the time what Bioware did, and especially for a big AAA, is like they sort of really jumped into the sexual orientation side of this game and this journey, where you can play as a gay or a straight character, or you can romance characters that are both in this game. And so having that choice in such a big AAA game where you can follow whatever sexual orientation you wanted, that was really big for the game as a whole. Like, it doesn't play a huge part in the core moment-to-moment narrative of Mass Effect, but I thought what that did for this game as a whole, and just the risk and I guess the big step forward that BioWare took in that regard, and you see a lot in sort of future titles with Dragon Age, and then followed through in obviously the other Mass Effect titles. For its time, it was really big. It was really big. And as a 21-year-old male seeing that in a video game for the first time, it really stood out to me. Like, wow, these guys are taking a stand here and doing something really different. It's not just a straight male-female relationship here. You can romance same sex. You can romance aliens. Like, love is what this game's sort of saying, and it's trying to sort of, I guess, have a nice light sitting atop of the constant racism and hostility between the races out there, human or alien or otherwise.
Yeah. I think it was more the future sequels that touched more into that same-sex kind of thing. I don't think the male Shep could romance any males in this game. I think it was just...
Nah, Caden. You can romance Caden.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go. I didn't realize. I knew that like the femme Shep could romance the Asari, which technically isn't female, as she points out in the game, but she's
pretty much androgynous, really.
Okay, yeah, interesting. They definitely gave you more options as time went on.
Yep.
And yeah, it's cool that I guess it's cool that you can romance like Garrus and whoever else, even though they are weird looking. But if that's your thing, okay.
Everyone's horny for Garrus. Everyone loves Garrus.
I don't see it personally, but whatever floats your alien boat. The race things, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I had that as well. It's something where even other members of the ship, because it's an alliance ship, primarily humans, they have the same views. I can't remember his name, who's like on the left of the galaxy map. He's like a map kind of like navigator or something.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Is that the Admiral? Is that...
No.
That's...
He's just... You only kind of talk to him the once at the start.
Yeah.
But anyway, in the second... So he's kind of like, oh, what's with all these aliens you're bringing on the ship? And then in the second game, obviously, spoilers for Mass Effect 2, at the beginning of the game, the ship is destroyed, and he... some of the crew don't make it, and you can go to the wreck of the Normandy and find dog tags, and there's like a data pad from that guy, and the entries in his journal are talking about how he started off with this kind of prejudiced view towards aliens, but by the end of his adventures with Commander Shepard, he's like, I would die for anyone on this ship. Like, these aliens are all right, basically. And that's really cool that they go that way. And you mentioned the council. It's not just like the humans that are looked down upon. Like the Volus race don't have anyone on the council. The Elcor are overlooked, and the Hanar are overlooked, and all the different, like the Solarians hate the Krogans, and the Krogans hate the well, they hate everyone, but the Turians, and they have this history of wars with each other, and it kind of reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, how you got the elves and the dwarves and they kind of at each other, but then like they kind of band together and overcome their differences. So that's it is a really cool thing. So for the theme, I kind of had unity, because Commander Shepard brings all these people together, and it, like throughout the game, you know, it's about what's best for the galaxy, saving the galaxy or the world. My astronomy is not the best. I was going to say
the Milky Way.
Well, it goes beyond that, isn't it? What's bigger than the solar system? I guess it is the galaxy. So it's saving the universe from the collectors and the reapers and whatever. It's not just about humans. And it, you know, as much as like Cerberus is about humankind and you know, the Citadel's this place where everyone comes together. So I think that it is, you know, it's cool to see that as a unifying thing throughout the series. That's probably the main thing that I took away, especially since I saved the council at the end of the game.
They're all dead. They're all dead in on both my playthroughs, my OG one from 07 and my current 2021 run. They are dead twice.
Okay. So we've talked about this already, but where can you see the influence of Mass Effect now that, you know, we've got 14 years of hindsight, and I think a lot of developers have been influenced by the way this game came out?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. Like, yeah, the storytelling, I think, is one big one. I think, like, as you mentioned, we sort of covered this off indirectly a few times in some of the other discussion, and just the focus that BioWare had on character development and
voice acting,
discussion
too.
And voice. Yeah, the voice acting was on point. Like, we didn't even talk about the cast that was behind Mass Effect and the subsequent sequels as well. Like, they had some big names in there, like Lance Hendrickson, science fiction royalty in there as Admiral Hackett, like Keith David as Captain Anderson, stuff like that. Some really big names in there. You already mentioned earlier as well, like with Jennifer Hale, who's video game voiceover royalty, or even just voiceover royalty in general. She does a lot of cartoon work and things too. So, yeah, they really sort of put a lot of time and money and respect into character development, and I think that was a big thing that stood out for me. Like, there were big narrative games that gave you a complete experience, but like when you compare it to something like, say, like BioShock that came out in the same year, it's a phenomenal game, one of the greatest games of all time, but most of that storytelling was done through faceless recordings, you know, like you'd get live audio, but you wouldn't see facial animations. You wouldn't get to know these characters outside of a voice or reading a journal entry and things. So it really stood apart from a narrative character development, mainline story development perspective. And yeah, everyone at BioWare, like Casey Hudson was heading this thing up at the time, and like, you know, props to the team involved in making this thing feel like a science fiction space opera. Like, this was as close to playing a Star Wars game without playing a Star Wars game. Like, I know there's plenty of Star Wars games out there, don't get me wrong, like, and they've done really well, like KOTOR and stuff like that. Great storytelling, great RPG elements, but this was like that next step for me as far as storytelling in a video game in a science fiction world, and it really, really stood alone. And I loved it. I loved the Paragon and the Renegade thing was another big one, where it doesn't have to be a good or a bad thing. You know, you can operate in the grey. It's not just being evil or a saint. You can react in certain ways, and it doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. You're just making that decision to ascend and work your way through these troubles. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Like, it's tough to nail it down to specific references. Like, as far as influences, like I've seen things like with Stranger Things, I wrote down just as because seeing what 0 and 11 are from Stranger Things, they're pretty much the exact same character. You know, they're taken away and they're experimented on, and you know, they're superhuman people that are damaged and trying to come back to reality, and you see some of that type of influence there. But I don't know. What did you have? You got anything else that you want to share as far as?
We should shout out to BioWare for, you know, this wasn't their first attempt at this kind of game. Like KOTOR, as you mentioned, and KOTOR 2 had been the similar kind of in-depth, a lot of dialogue, building a world. So all that stuff was there. I guess the technology had improved enough that they could make it a bit more cinematic in this game. But yeah, as far as how this influenced future games, I think the way that they pulled all those elements together, the morality, the character development, like doing it at this AAA level. We've played games with cutscenes, there's Metal Gear Solids and games like that. But to have that level of a cutscene mixed with all the RPG elements and making the dialogue options, the dialogue options that I was used to making were way more static. And like maybe it was like, like a Grim Fandango or that kind of game where it's, you there's dialogue options to get information or to talk through a situation, but it's not like changing the future of this world. And I think that branching narrative where the decisions you make have an effect later in that game, but also in sequels, is such a cool idea.
In future games too.
To see them do it with not just, something smaller like a Telltale game, which is kind of more bottlenecked where things head towards the same result and a character might live or die. There's like side characters in this game, like random side mission that you can help, and then it pops up 2 games later when you're trying to build like resources to go to war with the galaxy. So they really had like a long-term vision in this, and I think that's really cool. I think the assortment of characters, the kind of like the motley crew that you pull together, I think that not that this was the first game to do it, but to see them do it in such a cool way, I think that definitely influenced the way that a lot of writers would design characters in the future. But yeah, pinpointing like this game was influenced by this game is hard to do. I think it's just a general thing that, the success of Mass Effect across the 6 years or whatever the 3 came out is just impossible to ignore in RPGs that take place in this big world. Like, I'm sure The Witcher was influenced by it, and I'm sure that, Cyberpunk and Fallout and all these games that work in that space have taken bits and pieces from a game like this that also took bits and pieces from those games that came before it. Like The Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 had a save that you could transfer over so that your decisions, cross through. So, they weren't the first to do it, but I feel like they may have been the first that I know of that did it at such a high AAA level.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think, BioWare took a few risks and it certainly paid off and tried some new things at the time. And they just nailed it from the jump. And just like what you mentioned, these small nothing discussions or nothing side missions that are just throwaway in Mass Effect 1 that you can forget about. And then 2 games later, there's a flow-on effect to that. Like, it's so great that they've sort of connected all these little dots and brought the trail of breadcrumbs to various resolutions and sort of follow-ups. I really love that attention to detail.
And also just by creating a sci-fi world that is something that you can take seriously, I think has a lot of influence. Like, there's been so many sci-fi games where they're like, you've played Outriders recently. Anthem was a game. Obviously, it was BioWare again, but there's games. I often play these games and I'm like, this feels like Bioshock. Like, they're not Bioshock. This feels like Mass Effect, where they're trying to show this world, and it might just be that first contact with aliens, and this is what happens after it, and it's not like a kitschy kind of campy sci-fi, like a...
No, it's mature. Very mature. It's mature, and your decisions have weight, and you feel a wave of emotions playing this game. Like, there's parts where, there's some zingers and some humorous moments. There's really depressing moments. There's really proud machismo bravado moments. There's moments there, like, I remember during my playthrough in these games where, like, I actually shed tears with some of the decisions that I made, or if I made a bad decision and lost a crew member. Like, I remember in the suicide mission... in my first run through in that, I didn't have all the relevant things stitched up in the back end. So seeing some of these crew members die, that I'd grown attached to for 20, 30, 40, whatever hours, like, is heartbreaking. And there's not many games out there that can make you feel those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I was the same. Like, picking the wrong task for them to do in that mission leads to a death or something. It's like, crap. Do I load my save? Yeah. Anyway. All right. We're moving on to what we're calling the Modern Solace Omni Tool Award for Comedy Rewind listeners will know we usually do the Steve Buscemi Sparkplug Award to highlight, the bit actor that comes in, lights up the screen, and then disappears. The closest analogy we could come up with was the Omni Tool being the spark plug in this sense, and Mordin Solus being that character in Mass Effect 2 who he's pretty essential to the story, but he's not like the main character or anything. He's very much like sometimes comic relief, sometimes he's like he's pushing the story forward. But regardless, he's someone that deserves to have the award named after him, I think.
He's so great. I love Mordin Solus, and he's one of my favorite characters in this entire Mass Effect universe. Like, I love my time with him, and yeah, I'm very happy to see him be named for this prestigious award. That's for sure.
So let's look at our nominees. The first person that came to mind for me was Rex, because I love Rex. I think that he's so fun. I think the Krogans are so fun as a race in this game. The way that they just, they're just so physical, and they're like the bullies of the world, of this universe, really. And Rex is, a character that isn't afraid to, like, obviously butt heads with Shepard and even threaten to kill you at one stage, because he's so passionate about the genophage and the future of his race and the Krogans, but he's also kind of got, is it too much to say, a heart of gold? I don't know, but
no, he's got some niceness behind all that tough, hard exterior that he parades around with. He's a very no nonsense character, but I constantly found myself with Rex, and then in future games with Grunt as an often a member of my fire teams. And I'm with you. He's one of the most memorable characters for me, especially in Mass Effect 1. So I think he's worthy of a nomination. That's for sure. It
reminded me, especially with his voice, of Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's that very dry delivery and a different perspective compared to like humans because of being a Krogan. But in the the traditional sense of this award, it's usually someone that's not like relied on too much. They're kind of just in the background and popping up, and every time they pop up, it's a memorable experience. And that's why I think Joker might actually be the best recipient for this, because that character, you can go a really long time without actually going up to the cockpit and talking to Joker, because he's not, a character that you can romance or anything like that. So he's not like super essential from that perspective, but he is, at the start and at the end of every mission, just popping up with a little quip here or there. And, Seth Green's delivery as Joker is like perfect. It's literally perfect to me, right down to like when you say goodbye to him, like you end a conversation and he's just like, yeah, whatever. Like he's just kind of like trails off like in a very natural, like realistic way. And to the point where like, I wish that they actually animated this character to look like Seth Green. It's just like, you just can't get Seth Green out of your head when you hear him talk. You could say the same about like David Anderson with Keith David. It's like, I just wish it looked like Keith David, because he's got such a...
Yeah, he just needs that nice tight goatee or beard that Keith David sort of frequented over the years.
Such a great voice.
Because the character model for David Anderson isn't always the best. That's sort of, we won't say any more on that.
But yeah, what do you think for this one?
I'm with you. Like, it's, and I had the exact same impression with Joker, or Jeff Moreau, as he's more formally known as. Like, it is very much Seth Green playing Seth Green, but known as Joker. Like, he jumps into that role and he embraces it, and he has fun with the character, and some of the little sort of jabs and sort of jokes that you share between Shepard and Joker throughout this game and the future sequels is really great. And you have like a little bit of a sort of like a little brother bond with him at times. It felt like with some of the things you say, like, you know, he sort of ribs on you where not many people on the Normandy really do sort of talk that way to you for the most part. The rest of the other sort of mainline ship crew are very straighty 180, you know, yes, Commander Shepard, whatever you like, where Joker's just being himself and having fun. And the fact that he is sort of your first and last port of call for all these missions is nice. So you do get that continuity there, and then it continues through with some great banter and discussion afterwards on the flight deck as well. So yeah, I'd put my vote behind Joker for this one. I love your Rex, but yeah, I think Joker's more memorable and more suited to the Morden Solace Omni-Tool Award.
Very good. All right, congratulations to Seth Green, I guess. Put it next to your Nickelodeon Kids Award or whatever else is on the shelf.
Well deserved, young man.
Does Mass Effect pass the internet relevancy test via memes and GIFs? So this is a tough one for me because as a series as a whole, I would say yes, especially Mass Effect 2. Like there's been tons of memes that I know of that are connected to it. Especially the, you know, assuming direct control and my favorite store on the Citadel. I couldn't think of anything you might remember because you were playing the game when it came out, but I couldn't remember anything specifically from this game that is internet relevant still.
Yeah, not really. Like, I did see a sort of a meme or a graphic circulating not long after this game came out that played on the Han Solo Princess Leia I Love You, I Know, where they did the Paragon and Renegade options.
Right.
With that, where the I Know was the pure Renegade answer. I saw that kicking around, which made me laugh.
Yeah,
but outside of that...
Now that you mention it, the Paragon Renegade thing might be enough to get this across the line, because this is where it starts, and that's something that's popped up, definitely. Even just referenced. Like I remember seeing a tweet from like a musician that I'm a big fan of, and it was like, you know, this is probably 5 years ago, which is well after Mass Effect came out. But he was like, when you get up today, are you going to be a Paragon or are you going to be a Renegade? And I was just like, hey, this guy's making a Mass Effect reference. So, yeah, I think being the first game in a series that's very relevant, then we can say yes. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it carries. It's still relevant.
All right. And I guess the Mako, like people reference the Mako all the time as like an example of what not to do when it comes to controlling a ship. Okay. Could you make Mass Effect today, and what would the 2021 version be? So I think Andromeda comes into this conversation a little bit. There were things about that game that were great. The fact that you had a jetpack is the one that I remember, that you could actually jump over a barrier instead of
had a bit of verticality, a bit of traversal. Yeah. The movement was fluid, and then using that charge ability I love so much, just zipping around the battlefield in conjunction with that jetpack was awesome. It's tough to say because obviously they last year in 2020 they announced that there's a sequel in the works. You know, there was nothing more than a short little hype trailer, didn't give anything away, didn't see any characters. It was just a couple of nods to the original trilogy. So there is a 2020X version on the way, but like, I don't think if they sort of rebuilt this game or did something similar, like, I don't think it'd change too much, to be honest. Like the version we got in 2007, which we're funnily enough getting now anyway through this Legendary Edition, I think it's fine. Like, I think it still carries enough weight to be a game that's positively spoken about in this year amongst all the other releases.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that you could modernize it and just make it feel better. But overall, yeah, I think what they built between this and Mass Effect 3, I wish there were more games like it. Like, I wish there was a Star... Like, I know there's Knights of the Old Republic, but I wish there was a Star Wars game that was Mass Effect with that depth and that performance and that type of combat that's more, you know, cover shooter mixed with controlling biotic powers and that kind of thing. It would be so much fun to play that way. It's like a D&D campaign, you know, like we've got Han rolled first, and we've all got our different characters and different alien species, and it would just be so fun to roll around the universe with, you know, instead of a Krogan, you got the Wookiee, and instead of the Asari, you've got, you know, the Twi'lek or whatever it is. And I just think that it would be a no-brainer, really. It's just a shame that the EA and Bioware seem to have gone in such a strange direction with the games not really working.
Yeah. I guess the closest we'd get currently would be like the Outer Worlds, you know? But even then, most of your crew's humanoid anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, even though you are out in space and dealing with alien creatures and stuff, you can have an AI robot with you, but the rest of them are all human sort of party members, which is a bit of a missed opportunity there, I think. So, yeah, like, I think everyone loves science fiction. Everyone loves RPGs. So if you could take the best parts of Mass Effect and chuck it into something, like you mentioned Outriders earlier, it's got some of these same beats where it's a cover shooter with abilities and a couple of squad mates. Those squad mates are the real humans and not NPCs, so you don't control them and micromanage them, but there is some nods to that original combat style and science fiction love that you see from Mass Effect. Nowhere near as executed as well, mind you. Like Outriders is okay, but Mass Effect, just the storytelling and, you know, everything we've talked about as far as praising it the last hour and a bit, just it makes it stand alone. Like there's very few franchises that I think can go toe to toe with Mass Effect as a trilogy, or a 4-pack if you want to include Andromeda, as far as the sum of all its parts.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed as I was playing through missions was there's not a lot of dialogue between your party as you go through. Occasionally someone will say something, or there's like a you know, you can interact with like a view and then that, like, or a certain environmental thing, and you'll talk to one of the other characters about it. But in the way that, you know, God of War and The Last of Us and these more modern cinematic games have built that continued dialogue throughout all the action, like I feel like there's a lot of ways to build on that in this game that's missing. Maybe they do that in 3. It's been a few years since I played it. But I think that would be a big thing to make it even more full than what it already is.
Yeah, there is some hollow moments in the game, that's for sure. Especially like even if there was a bit of back and forth or more just dialogue when you're in the Mako or when you are taking down enemies, you will have a squad member say something directed towards Shepard, but there isn't any back and forth where if it's Liara and Rex or something, there isn't some continued discussion with them off to the side to just build out this world and make it a little more lived in, a little more alive. So yeah, it was certainly one of the, like, thinking about it now, like it wasn't something that I thought too heavy of in the past week or so, but there is moments where there was downtime or just mindless shooting and ability popping with no dialogue, no lines for a while. So it would certainly add to those moments and flesh that world out even more.
Yeah. And there's also moments where like a big thing happens in a cutscene and then it goes back to the, you know, you can control the character again. And it's really disjointed because there's no, like, nothing carries into the action. It's just like back to gameplay. And that's something that would definitely be adjusted now so that it, you know, maybe they talk about it for the next couple of sequences.
Yeah. Especially after some of like the boss battles.
Yeah.
It's really like that. You take down this big bad and then you watch them just awkwardly crumble onto the ground, and then it cuts back to a weird character discussion that just is not even sort of directly related to what just happened. Like the Sauron fight at the end when he becomes, you know, full like alien hive mind Sauron, and you kill him and he just like crumbles like, man, and then they're just like, oh, cool, righto. Let's go grab a cup of tea.
The worst one was when Liara kills her own mother, and then she's just like there. They have their moment, and then it's like, all right, where's the, you know, the tool that I have to interact with, the console to open the door, and you can like talk to Liara, and she'll be like, gee, it's cold outside, or something like that. And it's like, your mum just died. Like, where's the continuity?
Yeah, there's just a real immersion break there. There's no continuity between this big emotional moment and how that character would actually be feeling and interact in that. In that
and that's
moment.
just like, I could have mentioned that under what holds up the worst. I guess it's just something that's aged. But you know, in general, yes, I can't wait for a new Mass Effect to come out. Even though I'm just hoping the backlash against the Andromeda points them, and Anthem as well, points them back to what this type of game was before.
I guess we're gonna experience what their visions are indirectly through the next Dragon Age, because it looks like it's further down the development cycle, and it follows similar beats. Like it's got similar narrative build, world building, character building, cause and effect sort of mechanics and things like that. So we will see that, albeit in a medieval fantasy space instead of futuristic sci-fi. But we'll see if they're on the right track with that. When do you think this new Mass Effect's going to come out? Like, it's 2021 now. Do you envision seeing this before, say, 2025?
I reckon around 24, 25.
Okay.
Do we know when Dragon Age is out?
I think from what I've seen around the traps next year. Asterisks.
Yeah, I don't know how long these types of games take. So 25 feels best to me at this point. But who knows? Dragon Age, for some reason, the same team making it just doesn't hit for me. Like I tried Inquisition earlier this year, and the pacing is just and the combat is just completely not Mass Effect. Even though it's obviously not going to be the same because it's fantasy versus sci-fi, but it's just there's a little X factor that's missing for me, and I don't know. I might be in the minority with that, but I feel like Mass Effect is way more popular than Dragon Age.
Yeah, I'd take, if you had a gun to my head and had to pick one of those franchises, I'd be taking Mass Effect 10 times out of 10. Like, Dragon Age is phenomenal and I love that world as well, but Mass Effect just hits me differently.
All right, that gets us to our last question. Is Mass Effect still a good game? And I think, heck yes, we both agree. I loved my time with Mass Effect so much that I went straight into Mass Effect 2. So platinumed Mass Effect, gonna platinum Mass Effect 2 in the next 24 hours. And I don't know if I'm gonna go straight into 3. Probably not. I say that now, but we'll see.
You're a savage. Yeah, I'm cracked into 2. Like, just started on my journey with 2 today. So I'm not worrying about perfect gamer scoring them, as they call it on the Xbox world, but I'm just enjoying my time. Like, it's been a long time between drinks with this franchise for me, so it feels like a new beginning, a fresh start for it, where I'm getting a completely new experience. And some of the changes they've made with this Legendary Edition is great. Like, whether it be the improvements with the Mako movement, the inventory management's a bit better, the sprinting. The cooldowns have been reduced. The leveling system, like, I found myself leveling really quickly in 1. Like, when you go with the new legendary option instead of the standard 1 to 60, when you've got this condensed 1 to 30 leveling, your skill tree gets filled really quick. So you feel very powerful really quickly, which is great. Graphically, I think it's like chef's kiss. Like, yeah, it's not competing with a God of War or a Ratchet and Clank or Halo. Like, it's not competing with these big upcoming AAA releases, but it's done just enough to feel like it doesn't look completely out of place on these new consoles. So shout out to the people involved in doing these Legendary Editions and adding this fresh coat of paint and quality of life improvements. It feels good. It feels good. There is some minor bugbears we talked about, but overall this game is great, and I highly recommend picking up the Legendary Edition if you've played through the original trilogy already, or if you're first timer.
I actually had a glitch with the Saren fight where the game would crash whenever you used biotics on him. Damn. Like, I didn't realize why it was happening. I had to Google it, and people were like, yeah, don't use biotics or the game will crash on PS5. So
wow,
I was like,
too many textures popping off at once.
I got through the whole game. It was like the last fight and it crashes. What the heck? But no, you're entirely right. I think it speaks to the brilliance of the character design, that these characters and these aliens and everything still look awesome. Like the Krogan, like it's such an awesome character. Like it looks like what I imagine an alien race that evolved independently from humankind would look like in a different galaxy. I don't know why everyone...
The races are phenomenal.
I don't know why everyone speaks English. That doesn't make any sense, even when they're talking to each other. But we'll ignore that for the sake of, we don't want subtitles on every single interaction.
Yeah, I think, like, I know we're talking one primarily here, but like the Drell, I really love that race too. Like the sort of the fish
croaky
creature
voice kind of thing.
Yeah, like Thane Krios is a phenomenal character. He's one of my favorites in this entire franchise. But yeah, I love that they're all very unique, distinctive, alien-looking races. They're not just a human that's colored green or something. You know, they really went out there with some of these crazy-looking alien species, like the Elcor.
The Elcor are so good. Like, I love
they're
the Elcor,
so great.
The way that they have to explain their emotion at the start of each sentence.
Yeah, it's so great. And like the writing and the dev team behind all this, like chef's kiss to them, hats off to them. It's so cool. It's just, I can't speak highly enough of it. I love Mass Effect.
I just wish we had more like this. I'm born for the past 8 years of wasted time, essentially, with Bioware. And I'm saying that as someone who enjoyed Anthem and parts of Andromeda, I guess, but overall, just I just wish like they could have kept going along that path and making, you know, being more influenced by things like The Witcher than by Destiny or whatever it is that they seem to be going down those paths. But you know, got to make what you got to make. They got to keep the EA executives happy. Hopefully, we can just, you know, this love. We've been waiting for this release for a while. I should have said at the top, like I've wanted to, you know, I platinumed Mass Effect 3 like 3 years ago, and I haven't, as I said, I haven't been able to even access Mass Effect because I've got it on a disc and I can't pop a disc into my laptop. But to have these games remastered and released now, it feels like intentional. I think they recognize that people are hungry for this type of game, and that these types of games have aged super well too. So I think that, you know, fingers crossed, the love that these games getting will influence the future direction of the games they make, on top of the fact that they've been commercially flopped.
Yeah, it's certainly going to satisfy a lot of people's hunger until this next iteration of Mass Effect comes out in 2025 potentially. So yeah, this will keep a lot of people fed until then, I think, and a lot of people happy, a lot of purists and people new to this franchise. So
very good.
Yeah, shout out to Bioware, you've done well.
Do you want to plug the Ko-fi, Brendan, and what's happening with that?
Yeah, sure. So, listeners, if you want to support us monetarily, that would be fantastic. Obviously, you don't have to if you don't want to, but if you can spare a couple of dollars, head on over to ko-fi.com/we-are8bit to get early access to exclusive podcasts, as well as exclusive access to the Is This Thing On podcast. It lives wholly and solely on Ko-fi, so you can't get that anywhere else. You can also get automatic entries into our regular giveaways. You also get sent swag periodically throughout the years that you are subscribed to our Ko-fi page, and also you can get yourself an 8-bit Founders Coin for $20 delivered anywhere on planet Earth. Sadly, anyone in the broader Milky Way would pay extra if we need to ship this thing off Earth. Yeah, you know, a few more credits. We can maybe make a deal. Just slide into my DMs and we can talk about that offline. But yeah, Founders Coin, you want to get immortalized in our family portrait, which is Star Wars themed this year. It's going to net you $50 AUD, and that's going to get you not only your own individual portrait, but also the finished group shot at the end of 2021. And on the topic of Ko-fi, we also have subscription tiers coming out in the coming weeks once it gets officially rolled into Ko-fi. So, it's ongoing. It's apparently going to be released sometime between now and the back end of June. And once that is active, we'll give you some other options to get in at sort of cheaper levels if you want to. But as I said, you don't have to if you can't or you don't want to throw any money our way. Just be sure to rate, review, subscribe to all the podcasts under the 8-bit banner, because it means an awful lot. Helps keep the emotional lights on in our hearts, costs you nothing, and takes you next to no time.
Absolutely. Yeah, hit us up on Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that, you know, lets you do reviews and ratings. It always helps us out and makes us happy when we come across those nice, kind words. Thanks to everyone that supports us on Ko-fi, all the producers over there. Maybe we can do a little Mass Effect family portrait next, Brendan. That would be pretty cool.
I was thinking that as I said it out loud regarding Star Wars. I'm like, that could be fun. Or maybe we'll just humor ourselves and get ourselves modeled as Mass Effect characters over the coming weeks or months.
Very good. All right. Well, because this is a new podcast, I have no way to sign off. So I guess I'll just say, enjoy your cup of tea.
That's it, yeah. And shout out again to EA for tossing us a couple of keys for us to review and debut the video game book club here. But I guess until next time, 8-Bit Nation, keep turning those pages.
That's a good way to end.